if you think about it, we're being creative in every moment, right? We're perceiving, we're processing, we're producing reality all the time. Like right now, your toe is telling you, how warm it is, and if it's, slightly warm, slightly cold, the different perceptions that it has, whether there's pressure on it, and there's a signal traveling up your whole system, letting you know how your toe is doing. And most of the time, we don't even think about it because it just happens, and we don't even notice it. Right? Then, if you want to now wiggle your toe, you have to send a signal consciously down and wiggle your toe. Right? And you're consciously creating reality in that moment because you're creating the reality of wiggling your toe. Right? And in some ways, we're always doing that. Right? We're constantly perceiving things and things are coming at us. And then we're responding or reacting to the things around us as well. Right? And this is kind of this process of conscious creativity, or it's mostly unconscious, but the whole act of creating reality and really creating your life is about making it more and more conscious. Right? When you think about, starts with these things that, the Romans called our genius, these higher capacities, where there's some notions that we all have. Right? Maybe you've had a dream or, an idea at some point and it became a vision and you're like, oh, I could see this. This would be kind of cool to have in the world. Right? And then you start talking about it, maybe initially with yourself in your journal or in your sketchbook, right? But maybe then also to other people, and you start kind of shipping the idea around to see how other people are responding to it. Right? Because ultimately you're still testing if you're really committed to this. Right? But once you're really committed to this, and you say, yes, I'm actually going to do this, then it's about figuring out the details. What do I need to know about it to make this happen? And what resources do I need to attract to make this happen so I can ultimately launch it into reality? Right? And in a good day, things are just kind of flowing through you, right? And you've probably had one of those experiences where, time stood still or accelerated, or, you were just like so in it, whatever you were doing, that you don't even know what's happening because it was just flowing through you. And that's in the ideal days. But there's days, there's a beautiful book called The War of Art, which talks about by Stephen Pressfield, who talks about, how every force is a counterforce, and creativity also has a counterforce of resistance. Right? And so when something new wants to come in, there's things like, oh, who am I to do this? Or this is really big. I'm not sure if I can really, bite this whole thing off. This is much bigger than I can see right now, and I don't know how to do these things. Or am I cool enough to make this happen? Right? Am I really wanting to commit to this? Because if I commit to this, that means all my other commitments are also probably going to have a hit, right? Or have an effect on them. Right? Am I smart enough to figure it all out? Can I make it all happen? Right? Am I, cool enough to attract these resources? Am I attractive enough to bring in what I need to ultimately make this happen? And so in this process now, all these bullshit programs get triggered, right? That came from some early trauma, and, not necessarily trauma with a capital T, but one of those little ones where your mom said, oh, you will never be able to do this, or leave this to adults. This is too big for you. Or some teacher said, you'll never be good at this. You better get a simple job. Somebody that, told you about something that kind of kept you back there. Right? And this is where we get to be good alchemists and figure out how to activate these circuits again, right? By burning things, right? The same things that we do with matter in alchemy, we have to do for ourselves. And burning means I can frustrate a need of mine. I can learn how to fast. I can learn how to change my habits. Right? Then there's dissolving, which I have to do in this case because I have to let go of who I think I was and be willing to also not know and be uncertain, right? I have to allow myself to dissolve in water in that sense, right? And the emotions that could come up here. Then, of course, I have to go be rational about it and just separate what's what, right? Chop it all up, analyze it, right? What means cutting it into pieces and smaller pieces so I can understand it and really make rational sense of what's happening in front of me. Then I get to look at, how am I relating to this, right? The conjunction, how am I choosing to relate to this? What story do I buy into? What story do I not buy into? Right? Where does this thought come from? And do I will still value this? And this is something that I want to keep. And then, of course, the allowing yourself to sit for a moment, ferment it a little bit, right? Deal with it, go for a walk, have some sort of digestive experience so they can eventually distill from it what you need to learn here, and then ultimately put it all back together and become that and embody it, right? Coagulate again. So these are the kind of the two movements where on the one hand, something wants to come through us at all times, but then there's resistance hitting up against it. And this is why these practices are there, right? So that we can essentially clean our vessel and become a conduit for creativity to come through us all the time, like we're meant to be, these wonderful creation machines.